It's showtime. Guys, I just got out of the movie theater watching Mortal Kombat 2 at an early screening. Today is May 6th, Wednesday. Got to see it on the IMAX screen. And guys, I was blown away by this movie. So this is my full detailed spoiler review. First and foremost, guys, they gave us these free sunglasses for the movie. Uncaged Fury on one side, Mortal Kombat 2 logo on the other side. And I'm pretty stoked about these, but I will take them off to do this review for you guys. So you could tell they really listened to the fans on this one. Gave us everything that we wanted that was lacking or was subpar in the first movie. You don't go into a Mortal Kombat movie unless you're ready to see some serious fighting, blood and guts, and fatalities, and they delivered on all those fronts. It was high octane, high entertainment the whole time. There was not a dull moment. They just kept the pace going. It did feel a little fast, but in the best ways because they didn't waste any time getting right into the action that we all came to see. There was a ton of fan service from the opening card that showed you the text and font from the Mortal Kombat games in the very familiar yellow and red gradient color, and I knew we're in for a ride. So the plot, although there wasn't a whole lot to follow, takes place and picks up right after the first movie. You've got the aftermath of some of the characters being dead and how they figure out bringing some of them back. And then you've got the heroes that are getting ready for the tournament. It opens up with a very serious scene, just like in the first movie. In the first movie, we got the Scorpion and Sub-Zero history. And in this movie, you get the background of Kitana and her father. So we get introduced to Shao Kahn, the big baddie in this movie. And his motive is very simple. He just wants to take over all the realms. With Shao Kahn coming in and challenging the king of this realm, he defeats him, takes over, and he takes over his family, essentially, and then he raises Kitana as his own. So Kitana actually, surprisingly, becomes the main protagonist and main character in this movie, in a sense, and that's reinforced by the fact that her name shows up first in the credits at the end. But that was a nice surprise because all the marketing materials made you think that it was all about Johnny Cage, which, to be fair, it was partly about Johnny Cage, but it was almost as if you had two main characters kind of on two different tracks and two different journeys developing throughout the movie. Johnny Cage, as predicted from the trailers and the teasers, he's kind of going through this process of being chosen and feeling like a fish out of water and feeling like has no business being there at all. And Johnny Cage is kind of a washed up actor, and he's looking back at his memories of being a real fighter when he was young. He doesn't think he can be a fighter anymore, and then later realizes that he is a true warrior, and that's been hidden for a long time, and he finally let it come out. And throughout the movie, it's basically just the tournament. It's fight after fight after fight. Some people win, some people lose, some people die. Even though the movie's called Mortal Kombat, and we know people are supposed to die, each time someone actually did die, I was still shocked by those moments. Maybe that has something to do with the way they were killed off, because some of these fatalities are pretty graphic, just like the video game. So I want to talk about some of these new characters because the introduction of these new characters really breathed life into the franchise. Johnny Cage, played by Carl Urban. So Carl Urban is extremely bankable. People love him in every character that he plays, essentially. And here, I thought he made a great Johnny Cage. To contrast with the earlier version of Johnny Cage that we saw in the 90s movie, this Johnny Cage, although cocky and arrogant, was not sure of his fighting ability. And I thought he had some pretty funny one-liners here and there, but once they brought back Kano, Kano, just like in the first movie, steals the show, steals the scene, because every one of his lines just hit. He is hilarious. It was kind of funny to see Johnny Cage and Kano because they're kind of similar in personality, that they're always kind of digging at people and making snarky remarks. There's so many hilarious references to other properties. My favorite one is when Johnny Cage is packing up his stuff in his car in the trunk, and then Raiden and Sonya show up and he thinks they're just cosplayers at the con. And then Johnny looks at Raiden and says, "Hey, are you the guy from Big Trouble in Little China?" Which is so funny because we know those characters are basically like Raiden in that movie. If you ever watched it, if you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. And speaking of that Comic-Con scene, that just kind of felt like it was breaking the fourth wall a little bit because it's speaking directly to the fans, right? So he's set up at one of these conventions at a booth. He doesn't have a whole lot of fans lined up. And it just felt very relatable for anyone watching this movie who probably attends these conventions. So that was kind of a nice little treat for the audience. We gotta talk about Adeline Rudolph as Kitana and Tati Gabrielle as Jade. So Katana actually brought a lot of life into this movie. Most of the acting, as can be expected, can be a little cheesy and a little corny because it's really not about the characters or the acting as much as it is about the fighting and the action. But I think they chose a very talented actress to play Katana because she carried kind of the emotional weight of the movie to give it kind of a gravitas and a seriousness to this movie. And her range was best displayed through her relationship with Jade, who has developed kind of a sister relationship over the years. And you see kind of this connection, but also this betrayal because Katana is actually for the Earth Realm side, and Jade is conflicted when she has to deal with choosing sides. And they both kind of have a great dynamic with each other to show that sisterhood. There's a great scene when Katana is captured and Jade is standing next to her, and Katana is explaining that she is in fact alone. And to me, I read that as a double meaning because she meant at the time that she didn't have her friends with her, but also that she felt betrayed and alone, that Jay didn't have her back. And of course, Jay comes back and redeems herself later on in the movie when she also sides with Katana. Unsurprisingly, Louis Tan's character, Cole Young, was killed off relatively early in the movie, so we don't see him throughout the whole movie, which was one of the biggest complaints from the first movie from the fans, which is we just didn't like them creating new characters for no apparent reason because there's plenty of characters to choose from. But they did it in a pretty respectful way, right? Because Cole Young was still there during the training. He had some dialogue, and then he gets chosen to fight Shao Kahn. So Cole Young basically draws the short straw and has to fight the strongest character on the other team. And to his credit, he puts up a great fight and actually should have won because he delivered what would have been a death blow, but for the fact that Shao Kahn cheated with his immortality powers, right? And I know it's Mortal Kombat, and I know not all of our heroes are going to win every single fight, but it's still so jarring and so shocking to see Jax get killed, to see Liu Kang get killed, and to see Raiden almost get killed. So I don't know. I don't know why I was still surprised to see it, but I was. We got to talk about the fights because the majority of this movie is all fight scenes. Coming from a martial arts background, I am meticulously analyzing the choreography and the moves, how believable the actors are in executing the moves, and how well orchestrated the sequences are, and the camera angles, and the use of string work and harnesses and that sort of thing. But all that being said, I thought the fights were really good in this movie. I think one of the biggest complaints I had about the first movie is that the fights towards the end felt like a short montage rather than a fully fleshed beginning to end fight for each of the rounds. Some of the fights were better than others. So you had the Jax versus Jade fight. That was okay. Kind of comedic, kind of a flirtatious situation going on here, trying to convince the other that they're on the wrong side and that sort of thing. But choreography wise, it was just okay for me. And then you got the Sonya Blade versus Sindel fight, which was interesting because you had the spiky pits going up and down, which added kind of a different element to the fight because you're trying to fight, but you're also trying to not to get impaled by these spikes. And then you see the use of both of their powers and those powers being at odds with each other, which is very cool, kind of like a Dragon Ball Z style, like who's got the more powerful firepower than the other. And when you see Sonya Blade blasting her purple powers right into Sindel's torso, that was kind of shocking to see the hole in Sindel. But again, this is par for the course for Mortal Kombat. So I guess it's something about seeing it live action versus seeing it in a video game. You just aren't fully prepared for the graphic and gory nature of the fatalities, no matter how many times it's happening. Each time was a shock to me. But the best fight had to have been the Kung Lao and Liu Kang fight, which is not surprising at all. I'm a big fan of Max, who plays Kung Lao, and I know he's legit. He's been training all his life. He's got wushu skills, and it really shows on the screen, his confidence. And I've watched a lot of his interviews, and I know he does a lot of his own stunts, although he did have a stuntman in this movie. That big kick that he does at the beginning of the fight was all him. He refused to let the stuntman do that because that's one of his signature kicks. So to see him in action is always such a joy because he actually knows what he's doing. Whereas I know most of the others are actors first, and then they learn the fight choreography to be in this movie. But Max is a stuntman, choreographer, fighter first and foremost. And his moves and demeanor are so striking during the fight. The way he manipulates the hat, it's so bizarre because that's not like a real weapon, but he makes it look like a real weapon, and he can manipulate the hat in ways that are very believable. But seeing Liu Kang and Kung Lao, I mean, not only was the fight beautiful, but the emotional content behind it with the context of this is his brother. Now he's being forced to fight him in this tournament and he doesn't want to kill him. He doesn't want to hurt him, but he has to do what he has to do. At the end, to see him pull down Kung Lao into his own hat, saying that he's going to bring him back, you can see the emotion that Ludi Lin puts into that moment. And it was such a tragic but beautiful moment between those two characters. And to me, that was the highlight of the entire movie. There's some fun Johnny Cage fights as well. He loses pretty quickly to Katana. I loved how he did the dizzy daze stance at the end, and then because she doesn't choose to finish him with a fatality, he just kind of falls over, just like in the game. Probably the most fun fight was the Johnny Cage versus Baraka because he's just kind of running away. He's freaking out, doesn't know what to do. And at the beginning, nothing he's doing is really working. But then they told him, hey, be an actor. And he just gets into the role and muscle memory kicks in. He just does what he's been doing in all his movies and ends up on top, earning Baraka's respect. And I thought that was a really fun fight to follow. Speaking of Baraka, I was not expecting him to be as goofy as he was. Because he's such a scary looking character, I would expect him to be much more intimidating and dark, but he really wasn't. He was kind of like the comedic relief, kind of dumb, kind of goofy, almost like a Drax from Guardian of the Galaxy kind of character. And I really like the gimmick of Katana's headband and how she ties it up at the beginning, foreshadowing a lot of things. She uses it in her fight in a sparring match against Jade, which Jade's surprised that she was able to use it as a weapon. And then ultimately, once Shao Kahn loses his immortality, she uses her sash against Shao Kahn as well before taking him out with her bladed fans. There's also that big fight with Scorpion versus Noob, and then also on the side of that fight, Johnny Cage and Kano versus Noob Shadow. That fight was a lot to take in. It was a lot of fun, but as far as style, it was very CGI, very over the top. And I kind of enjoyed the grounded martial arts type fights like what we saw in Kung Lao's fight. It was cool to see them elevate the fight and give us some contrast with the grounded martial arts and giving us this over the top sequence. I want to go back to Shao Kahn, who's played by Martin Ford. I thought this Shao Kahn was pretty grounded. The way he spoke was somewhat calm and a little bit more human and not so over the top as a villain. They did a good job with Shao Kahn to kind of contrast him a little bit because he looks so intimidating with his sheer size and his scaly skin. But when he spoke, it wasn't always yelling and angry. Sometimes he was calm and almost human and relatable. Don't get me wrong, the character was still really brutal and really ruthless, but I'm talking about just his general demeanor and the way his voice resonated. I think it tempered what would have been almost a cartoony villain if he didn't dial it back like he did. So I have some questions because I'm not an expert and I don't play the game, but there was the idea that the competition was 5 on one side, 5 on the other side, and it was a 1-to-1 matchup. But then Katana decides, well, you know what? I'm just going to change sides and fight Shao Kahn now. That to me seems like a huge hole in the rules. Like you can just choose to switch sides suddenly, because then it becomes okay, it's actually 4 versus 6, and it just seems unfair, uneven. But let me know in the comments if you can make sense of that for all you gamers out there. But I just didn't understand why that was a possibility for her to be able to do that. Another rule related issue or concern that I had was the idea that at the end, apparently it was Liu Kang and Sonya versus Shao Kahn. Like, how's that a thing? How's it that they're able to fight 2-on-1? Again, I thought it was supposed to be a fair 1-on-1 match, 1-to-1 ratio. Again, if you know the answer, please let me know in the comments. Now, the whole Scorpion and Sub-Zero / Noob thing was not as necessary. I think that, again, as fan service, they wanted to bring those characters back and let them battle it out again. But plot-wise, they didn't really have a whole lot to do. But I took note that it wasn't that important for this movie and that they kind of took a back seat, which is fine. They incorporated a lot of the special moves from the games into the fight scenes, which I greatly appreciated. I particularly enjoyed Raiden when he hovers up and then he does his flying attack on Shang Tsung. That was really, really neat. And then, of course, when Johnny Cage does his split and then punches him in the groin, gotta love that. And then once he finally unlocks his power and does his shadow sidekick, that was great to see as well. They did use mostly a score soundtrack for most of the fight scenes, but they did incorporate some glimpses from the old original song from the old Mortal Kombat movie. And then, of course, they played it throughout the credits at the end, which is nice. But I wish they would have incorporated more of that kind of techno sound throughout some of the other fights so that it didn't sound so monotone with just the generic background soundtrack type music. I mean, it's super cheesy, but the fun of the old movie was the combination of techno music and really nice choreographed fight scenes using actual martial arts. And I just needed to see that combination a little bit more. So I wish they played with the music to incorporate that flavor into this movie. And I realize you don't want to copy the old movie too much, but if you're going to do fan service, you might as well just throw that in there. So my movie theater was actually packed. I think pretty much every seat was occupied. So it was so much fun. Anytime you saw a fatality, everyone was either shocked or cheering or clapping. So huge audience reactions every time someone died on screen. So overall, guys, I really enjoyed this movie. It's not like the greatest movie as far as plot and acting and writing and that sort of thing, but it's so much fun. And if you're looking to go in for a good popcorn movie where there's a ton of action and a ton of fights and fan service for you gamers out there, this is going to be a great time for y'all. Definitely looking forward to the next movie because they set it up. And again, I'm not a gamer, but it seems like the next movie is going to be focused on them going on this journey to get their friends to come back to life. If you know a little bit about that, would love to hear your predictions on how they're going to treat the third movie. So drop that in the comment if you can. Overall, I enjoyed this movie, but I recognize it is kind of a cheesy movie still with its shortcomings and with its flaws. But still, I'm going to give it an overall rating of 85%. If you're a Mortal Kombat fan, I'm curious to know, was this enough fan service for you guys? Did it give you everything you need? If not, let me know what was missing. Would love to keep this conversation going in the comments, but until next time, this is PK's Reviews.